Today, we have Martha Nino. She is a first-generation immigrant and a Silicon Valley professional. Currently, she is the senior marketing manager for Adobe, which of course is one of the largest technology companies in the world. She is also the host of the Moments with Martha podcast. Please check out her website at marthanino.com. This interview will look at the importance of sharing your own story, how freeing that can be, and also how vital networking can be to your own career and your own career path and history. She has had quite the interesting life, and honestly, one that proves that resilience, drive, and education can take you anywhere. We will touch on this a bit more in the interview though, so please welcome Martha Nino. Hey, Martha.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, I'm so excited to have you here. And I just wanted to say something though. So last year you were on Guy Kawasaki's Remarkable People. You had pretty eventful year last year, but so you were on his podcast. But I just would like to point out that I connected with you on LinkedIn before Guy Kawasaki. So technically I discovered you first.
There you go. Yeah, sure, Ashley. Absolutely. You did discover me first.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
The thing that I like about you, and of course I listened to your talk at Adobe, but I've also listened to you on other podcasts, and you have one of those voices that just makes people happy. I cannot imagine hearing you ever yell. And I know that you have daughters, but I can't imagine hearing you ever be angry.
If my daughters heard you right now, I'm gonna record this. If my daughters heard you right now, they'd come in and totally roll their eyes. You know that emoji with the little backwards eyes? They would totally do that. But you know, it's interesting because at one point I didn't like my voice. I didn't like it at all. I thought I sounded too young, and obviously I'm not young, but I thought I sounded too squeaky. I thought it didn't sound professional enough, whatever it is. And so I had some insecurities about my voice, and it's amazing because now I use my voice for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty cool.
Well, and I also think it may help you in terms of networking and meeting with different people. I think you just immediately put people at ease.
Oh, I appreciate that. Actually, that's one of the things I like, because if I'm meeting people and I make them comfortable, like right away, that's super cool.
So I said that you were a senior marketing manager. Can you tell our students and the other professionals that may be watching this, and I know you've been asked this 100 times, what do you do?
What do I do? Yeah, it's an interesting question because it varies on a day-to-day, right? And depending on, what job description you read on LinkedIn, it could change. But bottom line is I help sales sell. So we get creative on, what we can get out into market. Is it the right tagline? Is it the right image? Is it the right picture? Is it the right event? Is it going to drive excitement? And if it does, we do it again and again and again. So it varies by company, but for the most part, that's what I do. I work with sales to try to achieve a number.
Getting back to your talk, which do you think your talk at Adobe, this was at Adobe For All Summit in 2019.
Yeah.
Do you think that was just the start of you becoming busy and people wanting to talk to you more? Do you think that was it?
It didn't start there. If I kind of look back, it started when I was a child, really. And I think it's been a buildup of my whole life to that. So I don't think that you can say it started there. As a matter of fact, I do think that was basically the catalyst to it pushed me into that direction, which I always have wanted to be going into. And honestly, I didn't even know. Like, the reason why I spoke that day was because I've always wanted to be on a stage. I've always, does that sound silly?
I love it.
I wanted to be on a stage. I've always seen amazing speakers like Kai Kawasaki. As a matter of fact, that's how him and I connected back, because I had seen him in an Adobe stage, and he was like so cool, and he's like talking about his like, whatever 10 slide thing, all of his amazing things that he does, and he was doing it in such a chill fashion. I was like, man, this guy's so approachable. How can I do that? And then, anyways, I've seen a lot of speakers, and I always wondered and sat back and in the audience chair and wondered, could I do that? Nah, I'm not good enough. No, my voice is too squeaky. Whatever that might be. All of those like negatives, came in. Um, and by the way, if I'm going to do it, all the people that I work with are like, very educated, right? Yale, Stanford, Harvard, you name it. And my insecurities kicked in. I'm from a grass shack. I was born in Mexico.
And that's what I want you to talk about a little bit more, because I have students watching this and they hear senior marketing manager and they think that you've just been coasting, that you've had those connections and that life has just been easy and
Oh,
good.
and I had this opportunity from Adobe come. They sent out this mass message to 22,000 people. And they said, if anybody has a story of diversity, the topic was diversity, submit your story. And I was like, oh my God, if they only knew my story, no way I'm going to tell my story. That's too embarrassing. Like all of those negatives again. And in the end, I thought about my two daughters, which are teenagers, and what advice I'd give them. And immediately, it was a 300-word little thing. And I submitted my story. And I kind of toyed around with what I was okay saying. And
Mhm.
then in the end, I'm like, you know what? I have nothing to lose. And once I was okay with the worst possible case scenario, I hit enter. That
Real
was pretty
quick,
cool.
what did you think was going to be the worst case possible thing?
Oh my God. People would think I'm an idiot, that I'd fall on my butt, that I get fired, that they think less of me.
Hmm.
And I mean, I have been in this industry 25 years, and I have pretty good standards in the industry, good standards, whatever, good reputation in the industry. And was I going to ruin that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I want this more than anything. So I'm going to take a chance. This is my chance. This is my one chance.
And you did it.
And if I didn't do it, I would kick myself in the butt. And I didn't want to live with that regret.
So I want you to talk about your upbringing and your background, because it really is an amazing story. And that's why so many people want to talk to you and they want to hear about it, because it's these stories that
Yeah.
people don't get to hear.
Yeah. Well, they don't hear them because they're scary,
Mhm.
and there's repercussions to hearing them, or there could be repercussions to it. I think what people don't realize, what I'm realizing, is there's also opportunities and possibilities that you can open up for others if you do. So that was kind of what happened after I spoke. But okay, so I was born in Mexico. I was born in central Mexico, the state nobody ever hears about, Zacatecas. And I was born into poverty. I was born in poverty. As a matter of fact, I was born in a grass shack, dirt floors. My first crib was a dresser drawer,
Wow.
and my parents picked cotton. And this is not too long ago. So major, major poverty. And my parents knew that if we stayed there, my life was not going to be very good, and neither was theirs. I mean, they were recently married, so we border California here. I mean, I'm in the Silicon Valley, and they just decided they were going to take a risk and come over across the border illegally, undocumented. And the way to do that is you have to hire somebody who knows the in and outs of the border,
Mhm.
right? And that's a whole different thing, because remember, my parents have no money. So
Yeah.
how are they going to do this? So anyways, there's some agreement with somebody. My grandfather was already here. He was a janitor at a company, and he says, you should come to Northern California. And they're like, but we have this little girl. How are we going to cross her over the border? And so they hired somebody I actually passed as somebody's child, and I came in the car with this person as a child. I wasn't even 2 years old. I was not with my parents. I was not with my parents. My parents, while I was doing that, they were walking along the border hills and beaches of San Diego, which is the border, hiding in the middle of the night, hoping nobody would catch them, following this coyote, and yeah, hoping that we'd reunite.
Because the coyotes, that's what the smugglers are called.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I think that hoping we'd reunite is big
Yeah.
because there was also a possibility that maybe we wouldn't.
Hmm.
And, you know, that's a story of many children here in the United States. Fortunately for me, we reunited. But now you're here in the United States, and we're poverty in the United States is nothing compared to poverty in a different country. I mean, we ended up moving to Northern California, and in a small little one bedroom duplex, one bedroom, and eventually 9 people lived with us.
Oh, man.
9 people, but nobody knew that. Nobody knew that. Why? Because you don't want to call any attention to yourself ever, ever. So I grew up basically, you know, it's all subconscious. You just don't say much. You don't
Mhm.
say much because you don't want to wear bright pink things. Now I do, but you actually end up blending. You try to blend. My parents didn't speak English because they had an accent. And at the time, there was maybe 2 or 3 different nationalities here in the area of Silicon Valley. And by the way, this is before Silicon Valley even existed. Silicon Valley, before it was Silicon Valley, was gladiola flower fields, cherry orchards, apricot orchards. Like that's what we grew up with around us. And it was beautiful. There was also a lot of manufacturing going on. But my parents would do cement, you know, cement work, clean houses, you know, sew clothing, whatever it was, but no calling of attention to themselves at all
Mhm.
because they did not want to go back to cotton picking in Mexico. Because any sign of them being undocumented in this country at the time, somebody could have easily called and say, pick these people up. They don't belong here. So that you don't belong here kind of sticks into your head. So for a lot of years, that's kind of how I grew up. You just don't say too much. You kind of try to blend in, and you kind of go to life through life, and eventually my parents, you know, were undocumented for 15 years. And I have no idea, by the way, now I talk to my parents about that, like what was happening during those 15 years behind the scenes. All I knew is I was going to school, I was going to a bilingual program. I was going to school and I was just kind of coasting. Nobody talked to me about college ever, ever,
Mhm.
ever. Why? Because my parents didn't go to college. My dad had a second grade education. My mom had a sixth grade education. They came from cotton fields. They know nothing. They
Mhm.
know nothing. And the people around me didn't know either until I hit high school. My dad had cancer, and I've actually been working since I was 10 years old. I've been working since I was 10 years old. I did paper routes. And as a matter of fact, my paper route, which I had for 4 years, served served as a sales experience because the more newspapers I actually delivered, like on a bike, you know, like the more money I earned $1 per paper per month. So I'm like, well, if I can sell more subscriptions, I can double that. And I eventually kind of perfected my pitch and this is from the time I was like 10 to 14 years old. Right. So I learned kind of the value of I knock at the door, I do good customer service, I get rewarded, I get tips. And I think that kind of stayed in my head. I never played baseball, I didn't join track, I didn't do cheerleading, like none of that because I had to work. So, but I did other things, right? I'm trying to sell subscriptions and, you know, collect money, and I'm doing that. But bottom line is, my father had cancer. I had to work. And then at 14, I was already too old to do a paper route. And my mom got me a job working with her at a warehouse, at one of these warehouses that were here in the Silicon Valley. And I was in the back of the warehouse. I did a night shift after school. And I actually was completely horrible. I really suck at like these jobs in the warehouse. And the, the company owner was a lady named Beth, blonde hair, blue eyes, pearls, like super fancy. Yes, just like you, super
Thanks.
fancy. I'm over there, it's the 80s, right? My hair is this
Yes.
high. I have like super cool eyeliner and pink lipstick, and I completely opposites. But she called me into her office, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. And she says, Martha, you speak English? I'm like, yes, I do. And she's like, well, why don't you answer these phones? And then she gave me some papers to file. And then she said, add up all of these receivables. And I'm like, okay, I did whatever she told me, because I hated being in the back. I
Mhm.
hated being in the back because I wasn't good at it, but I was really good at all this other stuff. So Beth was my first work mentor.
Wow.
And Beth got me out of a warehouse. And I honestly think that it was because of Beth that it kind of broke that cycle, because it gave me
Mhm.
another view into the possibilities. Like, I didn't know that people with my background could be in offices even. But she says, you're pretty good at it. So I kept doing it and kept doing it, kept doing it. Um, and
You
then yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it also showed you that people outside of your family
Yeah.
could be trusted in some ways.
Yeah. So it's really cool that you mentioned that, Ashley, because I do think that it did she was a safe person for me, and she did look nothing like me, and she wanted the best thing for me. And I don't know if she just made me trust her, and I knew she was a good person. You're absolutely right. And because of people like her, and actually you're right, it might have opened up my eyes to something different and to different people to
Mhm.
also let inside my circle. Because remember, I've been blending, and for the most part I've been staying with my little safe group,
Yes.
right? So me kind of doing that, it opened up my eyes to so many other different things. Eventually, I ended up at that company for 7 years, but which was fantastic. So I did it all through high school. But during that time, I was still going to high school, and I didn't really focus on school because remember, nobody talked to me about school of any sort, because nobody really. It was all about working in the United States,
Mhm.
not school. Now, that said, there are people from Latin America, from different places, that come to the United States educated. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm not that fortunate.
Yeah.
I came to the United States from people who were not educated. So of course I wasn't going to get that background, and I mean, of course I was going to focus on work because that's what my family did. Um, but my father passed away during, I think I was a senior in high school, junior, and I needed to help out my mom because there's one less income, right? So
Mhm.
I ended up working more time at this company, and then my senior year of high school, I got kicked out of high school.
Ugh.
And imagine, like, when I did that talk, I had to say that. Like,
Yes.
I was not from any prestigious anything. I'm just a person that had a really rough beginning, and this is the truth. This is the
Mhm.
truth. I got kicked out of high school. The principal sat in front of me and he says, "You're a bad influence." You know, yeah. Uh, I might have looked like a bad influence. I had, like, remember the high hair and all of that, but that was my armor. That
You
was
were a
my armor.
breadwinner. You were helping to put food on the table, and here you are being called a bad influence. I mean, it just seems like you just keep getting beaten down.
Yeah, but he didn't ask me why I
Mm.
was, late to classes. He didn't know I was working nights. He didn't know I was helping out my family. My father was dying. He didn't know that.
Mhm.
So I just wish he would have asked why, but he didn't. And so I got kicked out of high school and I ended up at a continuation school. And at that continuation school, that was a whole different, I think it opened up my eyes to totally different kids. These kids, some of them were in gangs. There was girls that were pregnant. There was people who were kids that were homeless, that
Hmm.
were living in a warehouse. It's like everybody who's had like a hard upbringing was there, or who didn't have much direction, or who people. All these kids never had been asked why.
Mhm.
So
They
I think
just were put in a place.
it's like we don't want to deal with you, type of thing, until this one counselor, he's checking up on me and he's like, Martha, how are things going at this new school I'm in? And I'm like, well, it kind of sucks, you know.
How are things going?
Like, I don't like being here. Like, but it's interesting because my brothers were there.
Yeah.
You know, my brother who got somebody pregnant at 14 was there. My nephew was there. These are schools, right, where everybody who's an outcast ends up going to. But anyways, I still didn't like, I love my brothers, but I didn't like being there. And he says, well, why are you here? Why are you here? That's what he said. Why? First person to have ever asked me why.
Mm.
And I told him, I work at nights. This is what happened. And he's like, tell me more. Why? So he spent like a good hour with me. And he was, you know what, Martha? You're behind a whole year. A whole year. But I think I have a plan. And I'm like, tell me. He's like, well, you're gonna have to buckle up on the, learnings and focus on your school. But I think that we can get you out of here in 4 months, but you're gonna have to go to night school. And so I did. I went to night school and then I took on extra assignments, and I did everything that he wanted me to because I knew that that was an opportunity for me to get out of this place. And I did it. Oh, but one thing, I had to quit working.
Mm.
And that was big for my family because remember, they need my money. We all need to contribute and help. And I ended up talking to Beth, and she says, absolutely focus on school. I'm like, how am I going to I need to help out my family. And she's like, don't worry about that. We'll figure it out. You work on the weekends, double time, whatever it is you have to during the week, you focus on school. So now I had a support system by the winter time I was back. And a few months later, I graduated with my class on time.
Wow.
On time.
Like a full year in 4 months. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. But nobody asked me about, I did graduate, but now, and then I'm like, well, now what? Now I'm graduating. Now what do I do? So I didn't have the mentors to tell me, do this so you can go into college. Like, this is what you have to do. I didn't know that. All I knew is to work. So what do? I keep working with Beth. But she let me do all of these things that I actually liked. Like, she let me give tours of the warehouse that I worked at. Tours. I didn't have to work in the warehouse. I just gave tours. And my mom was in the back of the warehouse, and she was proud that I was her daughter and I was working in the front. That's a big thing for me because she knew that she was proud because for the first time, somebody was actually moving from the back to the front.
Wow.
Like, that's my girl, that I could feel that from her. So I'd give tours of the warehouse, and then I'd answer phones, and I'd help out with sales, and I'd file, and I was clean. My clothing was clean. That was important to me. I was warm. I wasn't in a cold warehouse. So I did that. And then my father passed away.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And at the time, actually, she gave me an opportunity. She's like, why don't you come with us to Mexico? So they were going to move the company to Mexico because this was becoming the Silicon Valley. And they're like, you can manage the warehouse. You can manage all those people, you know the language. And I'm like, I'm 19 years old. Are you serious? I'm going to manage all these people? She's like, you can do it. You can do it. And it felt good for her to say that, but honestly, I couldn't do it because my mom was still here. My brothers were still here, and I couldn't leave them. I couldn't leave them. So that was kind of the biggest decision of my life, in saying I couldn't do something. And I said, I can't do it. One of the guys that I got along with, that we always were joking and stuff from the warehouse, he was like a shipper guy. He got me another job. So I ended up working at a company that manufactured office furniture for Silicon Valley companies. So I was 19 working at this new job, and it was because of this network, this guy that I was really cool with, and got me a job working at this office furniture manufacturing company. I learned everything there was about freaking cubicles. How much paint it took to paint one, how much fabric it took to build the panels around it, how many labor hours it took to install it. And Apple was coming up, Adobe was coming, like all of these new companies were popping up. And eventually I ended up at one of those companies.
Wow.
I ended up at one of those companies. So, and the way it happened was interesting because I went to another office furniture company to work. And by the way, this is a lesson for everybody. Never leave a company you like for money. For money. So I
Mhm.
left the company that I liked, this company that was allowing me to do all those amazing things, the office furniture company, for a few dollars more. And the environment was super toxic.
Oh man.
And so I left the company. I left the company. Best decision of my life. So I didn't have a job. And I went to one of these temp agencies that hired contractors. They're like, we have this job at this, I heard on the phone, this is a landline, sand company. And I'm like, I guess I'm gonna go work at like a, some kind of a machinery place. I need a job. They're like, can you start on Monday? And I'm like, a sand company. And I couldn't Google like what the company was because there was no Google. And I said, I'll be there. And I get there and it's this beautiful building. It was called Creative Labs. And they make sound boards for computers. So I ended up at a sound company. Remember, my landline was kind of choppy. And that's how I ended up in tech.
Wow.
I
That
didn't know
is just crazy.
half the things I was doing, but I just kind of went for it because it felt good.
It's that perseverance.
I don't know. I just went for it because it felt good. And when I got to that sound company, I liked it. It was really cool. And it's all these young people and they have all these cool ideas. And they had trade shows that you can attend. And they were doing all of it. Remember, it's Silicon Valley. So it's very exciting. And I liked it. I liked it. And I liked the people I was working with. And I stayed there for 4 years. And I was looking around, like the people that I work with, the amazing people I work with. I'm like, what's the difference between them and me? Well, the difference was that I thought I just don't have a degree. And this is probably why they're getting promoted and I'm not. And maybe that was not the reason, but that was my reason. And I didn't want there to be any boundaries anymore. I didn't want that to be an excuse. And I didn't want to have to explain myself every time I was in an interview as to why I didn't have a degree. Decided I'm going to get a degree. And I ended up going to the University of Phoenix, actually, which is kind of an alternative education university that, it's all about working people. And I focused on that. And then I went to kind of the local school for like the all the general credits. And
Mhm.
within 6 months, I did exactly what I did when I was in high school. I just focused and completed it as fast as I could. And I didn't sleep again. I'm usually not sleeping. And within a few months I was done. And once I was done with that job, a lady that I was working with at the sound company called me. And by the way, she's an executive at Adobe. Her name's Mala Sharma.
Oh.
Says, can there's this company and they're doing some cool stuff in the smartphone business, a company called Handspring. Before they were a little bit before their times. They're like, you'd be great at it. From that company, I ended up at Adobe, and
That's
I've been
wonderful.
at Adobe for 15 years.
You speak about believing in yourself and being okay with not being perfect.
Because if Martha from a grass shack, with dirt floors and cotton picking family can make it,
Yeah.
like anybody else is unstoppable. I mean, seriously, like I think it just was that.
Mm.
If there was a lesson for me learned from all of this was just kind of push through whatever it is you've always wanted to do. I want to speak.
Mhm.
Whatever it is you want to do, whatever it is for you, and even if you don't feel 100%, if you want to do it, push through scared. And the other side of scared freaking feels great. It could feel amazing and it can open up all of these different doors. And I tell you, ever since that talk, I have not stopped speaking since. I haven't stopped meeting people since. I haven't stopped, people haven't stopped telling me their stories. I feel people are more real.
Mhm.
But I also ran the story, my talk, by anybody who would listen to me. I'm like, if you were there, Ashley, I'd be like, you're a pro. Can you listen to me? Give me some feedback. I got little tips and tricks from probably a culmination of 30 different people. 30 different people out there of different backgrounds, even my daughters, right? So because I had never done it. So that's how I ended up, doing that talk.
Mhm.
And now be okay with a lot of no's. That's okay too.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, this is not going to work. I'm going to try this. If this is not going to work, I'm going to try this. And that's what I've been doing all this year.
I do have some students that want to go into sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And with you being at Adobe and Adobe being in such a high demand place to work, because it's awesome,
Yeah.
do you and do you have anything that you would be looking for on a resume, or do you think there are things that students should be doing right now as juniors and even seniors?
Yeah, build your network. I mean, it's never too early to build that network. Get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably, it's a tool that I don't think a lot of young professionals or people going into professional environment are maximizing. I mean, right now, everybody's on a screen. You don't have to go out and have coffee with Martha Nino or Ashley Marshall. You can just say, do you have 10 minutes? I love your profile. I love that thing you post. Personalize the message. Don't make it too robotic, because I will ignore the heck out of that. And people like me will as well. So
Mhm.
start building your network, start following those people that you might like, start following, learning about those companies that you might like. And eventually you kind of start to build your knowledge of where you want to be, and also your network of where you want to be. And once you kind of start building that, don't be afraid to learn. Hey, do you have 5 minutes? I'm interested in what you're doing. I don't know what it is. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Be humble. Be
Yes.
humble, be real. So anyways, start your networking early. Um, yeah, don't be afraid to personalize your message. Ask for time. You might ask 10 people for 10 minutes and maybe only one person says yes, but maybe that one person is that person that gets you in the door, or that makes an introduction so that somebody else can talk to you. So they're connectors. I call them connectors. This person, I can't help you, but I know that this person will. So, and then be yourself. I talked a little bit earlier about, hey, if you're shy, be shy. You don't have to be, this crazy person like me. You can just be your amazing self as you are. That's enough. Don't try to be anything fake there. Your resume also, I've gotten some tips on that. I know as a starting professional, it's probably really hard to fill that resume up, right? So personalize it, personalize it. And then also maybe like start breaking apart, what you've done. If you're a receptionist, if you're a barista, add something to it. You're a, caffeine connoisseur, whatever it is. Start adding these things that kind of make you fun, because you are being compared to everybody else who wants to get an Adobe.
Hmm.
And it's thousands of people. So how are you going to stand out? This is where your marketing and sales comes in. Get creative, embed video, embed projects, embed talks. Like people, then you become real to somebody. Then you become real. So those are some of my tips. Oh, quantify anything. Numbers, numbers, numbers. So if you're going to get into sales and marketing, I mean, it's all about investments and sales. So numbers matter. So if you're used to dealing with let's give you an example. Maybe you were doing a project and you started off with 4 people and you grew that project into 20 people. Well, now guess what? You've increased your growth by 60% by being the lead on this project. Whatever it is,
Hmm.
add a lot of numbers in there if you can. Um, so anyways, data driven, that's kind of the new buzzword. What else? Anyways, become memorable. I think that's the other thing. Anything that makes you memorable.
Oh, I love that.
And when you do get that interview, I would say don't hold back.
Hmm.
Don't hold back, because I guarantee you that one, and this is hard, especially starting, because you are insecure and it is new, but I guarantee you there will be somebody interviewing next, right after you, that might add that extra level of confidence. Um, so just put it out on the table. You have nothing to lose,
Hmm.
nothing to lose and everything to gain. Remember, you're not there, so you don't have it yet. So just leave it on the table, I would say. Look people in the eyes too. Just be, again, be your amazing self.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you think we didn't get to today that you think is important?
Yeah, I do have one more thing.
Yeah.
I talked about networking. I talked
Yes.
about networking. Don't just start your network. Like if you have a person that's in your network, like continue that network forever. I know that sounds like a very, very long time, but I have to tell you that one person that recommended me at that job, you know, my 5 years in, recommended me at that job that I was 15 years in. So become their friends, send texts, you know, check in on them. Believe me, it matters. It matters. I know it's work, but it'll pay off in the end. So that's,
Oh, I love that. That's such a great tip. So thank you so much. Hey, I'm a firm believer of networking.
yeah,
And I think that in a lot of ways, that's how I have pretty much gotten all my jobs.
yeah.
You create a friend and they pass on your name. And then once you work there, you've worked with other friends and they go somewhere else and then they pass on your name. And that networking is just so important.
Yeah, and I think it's under taught, you know.
Yes.
And I wish it was a course. Like I really do wish it was a course or something like that. But hey, maybe that's what I'll do later. I don't
Do
know.
it.
This was fun.
Well, I know that I'm going to have students that even if their background doesn't match yours perfectly, that they are going to relate to you
Thank
because I mean, struggle and being driven, and it's just a wonderful, inspirational story.
yeah.
There's strength in vulnerability. What I liked is that you told your story, you were real about your story. I was the first in my family to go to college, and they're struggling, they're probably having to pay for their own books, and I think that they are going to relate to you, and I really want them to know to just stay driven. Don't get discouraged by the person that has had, you know, iPads, super high powerful MacBook Pros and all kinds of stuff, and had all these video technologies on their computers. Don't get discouraged because you're having to compete with those people, because if you're driven enough and you investigate things enough, you can make it happen for yourself.
We can make it happen for you. Again, I had nothing. So you're absolutely right. However they can relate to me, whether it's people telling them no, whether it's people not believing, whatever it is, whether they're living in bad situations. I think my story kind of covers a lot of that. And if I can be of help to any of your students, please send them my way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So thank you so much. I'll be in contact with you.